Welcome back to Real Talk. I'm your host, Josh Bell, and today we're diving headfirst into the surreal and often bewildering universe of Tim Burton. Now, you might expect a trip through his signature gothic fantasy landscape, but today we're charting a different course. Get ready for a sci-fi action film that left audiences feeling, well, let's say more puzzled than enchanted. That's right, we're going to take a closer look at Burton's 2001 reimagining of Planet of the Apes. This film, a remake of the beloved 1968 classic, is one of Burton's most debated and controversial works to date. Critics were lukewarm, fans found themselves sharply divided, and yet, here we are, still talking about it years later. What does that say about the film's impact? For anyone familiar with Burton's signature style, think darkly whimsical narratives, intricate visual aesthetics, and lovable misfits, Planet of the Apes stands out as an unexpected outlier. Gone are the haunted mansions, the enchanted forests. Instead, we're thrust into this dystopian alien world filled with political intrigue, fierce battles, and morally complex characters who seem to defy the Burton archetype. So, what drew Burton to this project? What was his vision? And did any of it truly shine through the polished veneer of a big studio film? Perhaps there are hidden layers begging for a closer examination. Or maybe this is just a case of Burton missing the mark. Either way, I'm excited to explore it all with you, from the ambitious and the absurd to the downright questionable choices. Grab a seat, maybe some popcorn, and let's dive into Tim Burton's wild, baffling, fascinating version of Planet of the Apes. Buckle up. This might be an unforgettable ride. Alright, so let's break down the story at the heart of Planet of the Apes. We're introduced first to Leo Davidson, played by Mark Wahlberg, an astronaut stationed on the Oberon space station in the not-so-distant future of 2029. Leo's mission involves training chimpanzees for deep space exploration, hinting at humanity's evolving, often precarious relationship with primates and technology. But right from the start, things take a turn for the chaotic. During a dramatic rescue mission to save his beloved chimp, Pericles, Leo gets caught in a catastrophic magnetic storm, which sends his craft spiraling into an uncharted planet. When Leo regains consciousness, he finds himself in a world where the roles have been dramatically reversed. Intelligent apes have forged a rigid, oppressive society that relegates humans to a status that can only be described as second class. Here, humans live in abject fear, treated as inferior beings, enslaved and forced to serve their ape overlords. The power dynamics are ruled by the menacing General Thade, portrayed with intense fervor by Tim Roth. His fanatical beliefs about ape supremacy make him a genuinely formidable antagonist, drawing sharp parallels to real-world issues of power and discrimination. In stark contrast to Thade is Ari, played here by the ever-enigmatic and Tim Burton regular Helena Bonham Carter, as an ape noble with a compassionate heart. Ari believes in the potential for human rights and equality, creating this rich dynamic that complicates the narrative's moral landscape. As Leo navigates this brutal society, he gathers a band of ragtag rebel humans, leading a desperate resistance against the oppressive ape regime. The plot thickens as Leo learns more about the harsh realities of this society, one that mirrors and critiques real-world issues of hierarchy, discrimination, subjugation. Along the way, we witness some thrilling battles, some poignant moments of character growth, and an exploration of what it truly means to be human. And then, of course, we arrive at the climax, the showdown between Leo and Thade, man versus ape, in a scene that should bring the story full circle, yet the infamous twist ending at the Lincoln Memorial that lingers in the minds of viewers and leaves many of us scratching our heads and sending the internet at the time into a frenzy. So, Does the plot soar high above the stars, or does it leave us all lost in the cosmos? Let's get into it. Now, one of the reasons Planet of the Apes stands out in Burton's filmography is that it doesn't resemble a typical Burton film that up to this point we've come to love. We're accustomed to moody, gothic visual style. Think of enchanting yet eerie worlds of Edward Scissorhands, or the dark whimsy of Sleepy Hollow, and even the brooding atmosphere of Batman. But here, Burton is playing with a different toolkit altogether. In Planet of the Apes, the visual palette shifts dramatically. Yes, it's darker and grittier, but it leans heavily into an industrial and chaotic aesthetic. The bright colors and fantastical design elements we associate with Burton are largely absent. Instead, the production design paints a world where ape society is an intricate blend of tribal and futuristic elements, and showcases a brutal hierarchy reminiscent of a more medieval landscape. The apes live in an elaborate urban setting with structures that reflect their dominance and the oppression of the humans. This is a departure from Burton's usual style that might explain why some fans didn't fully embrace it. It simply does not carry the quintessential Burton feel we expect. Burton's trademark themes of isolation, misfits, outsiders, those are still present, but they're woven into the narrative in a different way. Here, Leo Davidson stands as our quintessential outsider. He's desperately navigating a world dominated by the powerful apes. However, this iteration of the outcast story, it diverges from the sympathetic, relatable characters that we typically would see in a Burton film. There's no Edward Scissorhands. There's no Beetlejuice here. Leo's struggle feels more forced than organic. His journey lacks any emotional depth that we've found in past Burton protagonists. Instead of evolving or learning throughout the story, Leo remains this passive person. He makes it difficult for us to connect with him. Ultimately, though, Burton's stylistic choices are bold and ambitious. They present a unique challenge. The film embodies a blend of genres and themes that don't quite mesh as seamlessly as they do in his other works. And it leaves us to grapple with this narrative that feels disjointed and, oddly for Tim Burton, very conventional. Now let's dig into the performances, because Tim Burton really stacked the deck here with a cast that could have, under different circumstances, carried the film to greater heights. First up, Mark Wahlberg stepping into the lead role as Leo Davidson, our stranded astronaut hero. Wahlberg, being known for his tough guy persona, he brings a certain grit to the character. Physically, he fits the bill, but the character himself feels frustratingly underdeveloped, especially when compared to the rich complexity of the usual Burton protagonist. While Wahlberg puts in the effort, he's clearly constrained by a script that doesn't really allow Leo to evolve beyond this one-dimensional figure. Where Burton's characters often possess a quirk or vulnerability that draws us in, Leo is oddly passive, making him a less memorable character than we'd really hope for from a lead in a Burton film. We have Tim Roth as General Thade, who emerges as arguably the most unforgettable character in the movie. Roth dives in with this ferocity that almost feels out of place, in a good way. His snarling, paranoid, and almost animalistic portrayal of Thade injects a palpable sense of menace into the film. Roth's performance is riveting, it's intimidating. He transforms Thade into a true villain, complete with this dangerous unpredictability. However, there are moments when his commitment flirts with melodramatic, veering into caricature of Burton's darker villains rather than a nuanced individual character. It's almost as if Burton didn't rein him in enough, allowing Roth to deliver a performance that's fascinating to watch, but occasionally it really overwhelms the scenes that he's in. Next up, Helena Bonham Carter as Ari, the sympathetic ape who serves as a rare voice for compassion and equality within the society. Bonham Carter brings her trademark charm and depth to the role. She imbues Ari with a sincerity that makes her one of the few truly relatable characters in the alien landscape. However, despite her talent, the character doesn't receive the complexity she deserves. Ari is primarily there to embody the film's themes of coexistence and understanding. The script doesn't really allow her to transcend the role. And let's not forget the slightly strange romantic undertones between Ari and Leo. What could have been this interesting exploration of connection, instead it comes off really awkward and forced, and does not resonate with us on any kind of deeper level. And we simply must mention Danny Elfman. Burton's films are synonymous with Elfman's atmospheric, otherworldly scores, and Planet of the Apes isn't an exception to this. Elfman creates a soundscape that complements the alien nature of the film. He blends tribal rhythms with eerie tones that add depth to the scenes. Yet, while his music undeniably enhances the film's emotional landscape, even Elfman's best efforts cannot elevate this narrative beyond its shaky structure and pacing issues. It often feels like the score is doing double duty, attempting to fill emotional gaps left by the writing and uneven storytelling. In the end, despite the tremendous talent of the cast and crew, their combined efforts couldn't rescue this film from its inherent flaws. So how about the themes Burton attempts to tackle in Planet of the Apes? While the film has ambitions of exploring identity, power structures, and belonging, it often feels like it's only scratching the surface of these complex ideas. The narrative presents this fertile ground for examining prejudice and dynamics of power in the essence of humanity, or in this case, inhumanity. The ape society depicted in the film is a rigid, hierarchical world where humans are not just subjugated, but brutally oppressed. This stark reflection of real-world issues of oppression and inequality is ripe for exploration. But the film falls short of leaving any lasting impression or provoking any meaningful questions or dialogue. In typical Burton fashion, we find Leo positioned as the outsider, fighting to carve out his place in a world that's turned upside down. This theme of the outsider is a common thread in Burton's films, but here, Leo's journey is less about introspection and more about just surviving. Unlike Edward Scissorhands, who wrestles with themes of acceptance and identity, or Jack Skellington, who we don't even review on this, but written by Tim Burton, he embarks on a journey of self-discovery. Leo feels more like a generic action hero than any kind of layered Burton misfit. While the theme of isolation, the sense of not fitting in, is certainly present, it lacks any depth and exploration we often see in Burton's other works. Instead, this film leans heavily on action sequences, which, while visually engaging at times, detract from the opportunity to explore any of these themes more meaningfully. The question of identity emerges here prominently throughout the film. What truly defines a character as human in a world where roles are reversed? As the apes rise to power, the humans find themselves in chains. The audience is forced to confront the nature of humanity itself and the fine line that separates civilization from barbarity. Yet, rather than really engaging with any existential inquiries, the film just skims the surface, tantalizes us with profound questions, and then never takes the plunge. The plot instead rushes from one action beat to the next, leaving these vital ideas feeling incomplete and ultimately unfulfilling. So, while the themes are indeed intriguing, they're largely underdeveloped. It's as if the film yearned to articulate some profound ideas of power and identity and societal roles. It becomes far too distracted by its spectacle to allow these ideas to really resonate. This is a significant missed opportunity for Burton, whose films typically handle these topics with far more depth and emotional impact. The potential for thought-provoking narrative is there, yet the execution feels haphazard, leaving viewers like myself yearning for some rich thematic depth that we've seen in the past Burton storytelling. It's almost like he's making a Michael Bay movie rather than a Tim Burton movie. When Planet of the Apes hit theaters back in 2001, it arrived with a wave of anticipation, but ultimately divided audiences. Critics and fans alike were primed for a Tim Burton twist on a beloved sci-fi classic, expecting his signature gothic and surreal style. Personally, I wanted like a Mars Attacks meets Planet of the Apes. However, what we received was a visually impressive film that, despite the aesthetic appeal, lacked any depth and coherence that we hoped for. The response from critics was predominantly mixed to negative. While Rick Baker's extraordinary makeup effects brought these apes to life with unique and believable presence, and it garnered praise, the film's narrative shortcomings were hard to ignore. The groundbreaking effects remain a high point, but beyond that, many of the reviews pointed to significant issues with the story's pacing, coherence, thematic depth, and raised questions about why a visionary like Tim Burton would take on a project that didn't align in any way with his strengths. Financially, Planet of the Apes performed reasonably well at the box office, largely due to the hype surrounding its release and the built-in fan base of the original Planet of the Apes franchise. However, it never became the cultural phenomenon or even a definitive entry in the sci-fi genre in the way that Burton probably had envisioned. It made money, but unlike films such as Beetlejuice or Edward Scissorhands, it didn't capture the public's imagination. We may have gone to see it, but very few of us have ever been compelled to revisit it, and it certainly didn't inspire any kind of fervent fandom. Over the years, Planet of the Apes has not aged into a beloved classic or a cult favorite as many of Burton's other works have. If anything, its reputation has diminished, and it's often regarded as an odd outlier in the Burton filmography. Die-hard Burton fans actually exclude this from their list of films, while the average moviegoer have really kind of forgotten it altogether. Nowadays, discussions about Planet of the Apes tend to occur in the context of other, better regarded films in the franchise, the iconic 1968 version, or the critically acclaimed reboot that came out just a few years back with the main ape Caesar. Those films actually transformed this into a mere footnote rather than being any kind of significant moment for sci-fi or Burton's career. Regarding its cultural impact, Burton's Planet of the Apes didn't leave any kind of lasting mark. There's no widely quoted lines, no iconic scenes or references in other media. It lacks the cult legacy of a film like Beetlejuice or the transformative influence of Batman. And it certainly didn't inspire filmmakers to further explore Burton's unique take on sci-fi. In fact, the film's reception may have prompted Burton to shy away from major franchise reboots in the years to follow, leading him to go back to more original and whimsical projects like Big Fish and Corpse Bride, which allowed him to remain within his stylistic zone. Even Burton himself seems to harbor mixed feelings about Planet of the Apes. In various interviews, he's expressed disappointment with the project, suggesting that studio interference, creative differences may have stifled his vision. It's quite rare for Burton to distance himself so publicly from one of his films, which speaks volumes about the creative dissonance that likely transpired behind the scenes. Ultimately, Planet of the Apes stands as one of a couple real misfires in an otherwise iconic career, and it serves as a reminder that even visionary auteur-style directors can falter when the project doesn't really align with their strengths. So let's dive into some fascinating behind-the-scenes stories, because Planet of the Apes had more drama off-camera than you might think. First up, the makeup process, arguably one of the film's standout elements. Rick Baker, the Oscar-winning makeup artist, renowned for his groundbreaking work on American Werewolf in London and The Nutty Professor, led the team responsible for creating those incredibly realistic ape designs. Baker's vision aimed to push the boundaries of prosthetics and makeup, achieving a blend of realism and expressiveness that brought the apes to life in an entirely new way. The makeup was so intricate and time-consuming that actors like Tim Roth and Helena Bonham Carter often spent 4 to 6 hours in the makeup chair each day. Imagine the patience and endurance required for that. However, the challenge didn't really end there. The heavy prosthetics and costumes took their toll on the actors. Reports from the set indicated that the temperatures inside the costumes soared to almost unbearable levels during long shooting days, making the experience quite grueling. Beyond the exhausting makeup routine, the film faced a series of production struggles that added to the stress of filming. Tim Burton's vision for Planet of the Apes clashed significantly with the studio's expectations. Originally, Burton wanted a darker, more introspective take on the story. He wanted to dive into complex social dynamics with the ape civilization in a way that would align more closely with his signature style. However, the studio pressured him to deliver a more action-oriented, blockbuster-friendly film. This creative tug-of-war really resulted in a final product that feels really disjointed, with Burton's darker aesthetic competing against a script that often veers into conventional sci-fi tropes. The studio's demand for a quick production schedule also meant that Burton had little time to refine the film, particularly the controversial ending. Speaking of the ending, it's maybe the lasting aspect of the film. It was meant to rival the shock of the original Planet of the Apes twist. However, the reception was far from stellar, left many audience and critics scratching their heads. Burton envisioned the jaw-dropping final reveal with the Lincoln Memorial twist, but the rushed timeline meant that key story elements were cut or underdeveloped. The result was an ending that felt confusing, not impactful, and it left viewers like myself really dissatisfied with the movie. Scheduling conflicts, on-set tensions all added to the chaos. Mark Wahlberg, who portrayed the character Leo, expressed frustration with the intense prosthetic requirements and long hours, and he wasn't alone in that struggle. Some of the actors playing apes found the physical demands overwhelming. They had to learn ape choreography and movement techniques to convincingly portray their characters, which also proved to be significant challenges. Burton reportedly found himself caught between ensuring the actors' comfort and satisfying the studio's demands for more action and more spectacle. Amidst all that turmoil, there are some quirky and fun production stories worth mentioning. For instance, the ape actors would often stay in character between takes. You'd see them wandering around the set, chatting, eating, and even engaging in heated arguments, all while fully decked out in their elaborate makeup and costumes. Burton encouraged this method acting to foster an immersive atmosphere, and it created a bizarre yet fascinating behind-the-scenes experience for much of the cast and crew. Ultimately, though, all these elements, the long hours in makeup, director-studio battles, unusual ending, on-set ape antics, combined to make Planet of the Apes memorable, but a chaotic production. It's a film where the behind-the-scenes story almost rival the movie itself, providing a glimpse of the pressures and the creative challenges that go unseen in most Hollywood movies. Okay, so let's get real here. Planet of the Apes has its moments, but it ultimately falls short of anything we expect from Tim Burton. There are glimpses of his talent, but it often feels like those flashes are obscured by a slew of studio-driven decisions that dilute his usual spark. The movie lacks the quintessential Burton signature that we've come to know and love, the quirky, emotionally resonant characters, the surreal worlds that provoke thought, and that slightly dark humor that infuses his films with life. Instead, what we get is a visually solid film that has no resonant depth or personality that we've come to expect from him. The visuals, while respectable for their time, miss the Burton magic that transforms ordinary scenes to hauntingly beautiful experiences. It's like watching Burton with the volume turned way down and the muted picture. The characters, too, fail to deliver any emotional weight or complexity like we typically associate with his work, especially when we compare to his usual flawed but endearing outsiders. Even Tim Roth's intense General Thade struggles to capture that villainous complexity that we've seen from like the Joker in Batman or the Penguin in Batman Returns. It's all a bit disappointing, really. A missed opportunity for Burton to leave his mark on the iconic sci-fi universe. With that said, Planet of the Apes is a 2 out of 10. It's an interesting piece to reflect on as part of Burton's career, but it's never going to be something you want to watch again. Particularly, new audiences aren't going to approach it for the first time. Rather than being a must-watch, it feels more like a curious side note in the trajectory of his filmmaking. But I'm curious to hear from you. Did this film resonate with you in ways that I missed? Or did you see it as a miss also? I want to hear your thoughts, whether you agree, disagree. Feel free to reach out, share your opinions. That's going to wrap up this episode of Real Talk, though. Next week, we're going to journey into Big Fish, a film that brings us back to the Burton we adore. It's filled with whimsy, profound emotional journey, and those magical visuals that pull you right into the story. Trust me, this one's a real treat and a true return to form. So if you're a fan of Burton at his most heartfelt and imaginative, you don't want to miss that one. In the meantime, don't forget to follow us on Threads and Instagram at Real Talk. We're always posting behind the scenes info, fan theories, polls, anything that just sounds like fun. So jump in, share your thoughts on Planet of the Apes. I love hearing from everyone, whether you're on the same page or you totally disagree with me. But thanks for tuning in, and until next time, keep watching, keep loving, and of course, keep those reels rolling.